The sun scorched the earth of Abel-Meholah without mercy. 12 yokes of oxen plowed through the dry soil, guided by a man with worn hands and quiet eyes. His name was Elisha. Day after day, he worked the same field, walked the same path, spoke to the same beasts. There was no thunder, no sign, just sweat and dust. And then the silence broke. A man approached, walking slowly, but with the weight of heaven in his steps. His name was Elijah, the prophet who once called fire from the skies. He said nothing, no greeting, no explanation. He simply took his mantle, the symbol of divine authority, and cast it across Elisha's shoulders and walked away. Elisha stood still. He felt the weight, not of fabric, but of destiny. His heart pounded. His hands loosened the reins. He ran after Elijah, breathless. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, then I will follow you." Elijah turned slightly, his voice low but sharp. "Go back, but remember what I've done to you." That was all.
Elisha returned, but not to delay. He slaughtered the oxen. He broke the wooden yoke and used it to build a fire. He cooked the meat and gave it to the people. It was a farewell, but more than that, it was a funeral for his old life. He burned his past and stepped into the unknown. From that moment, Elisha became Elijah's servant, quiet, observant, faithful. He poured water over the prophet's hands, stood behind him during confrontations with kings, and listened when the fire of heaven answered. He said little, but he saw everything. Years passed. One day, Elijah turned to him and said, "Stay here in Gilgal. The Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha refused. "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you."
Don't forget to like and share with your friends. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any exciting stories, and turn on the bell to receive notifications firsthand. We want to hear your opinion. Comment below on what you think of this video and share your thoughts with us. Let's be part of this journey of faith and learning together. They walked to Bethel, then to Jericho, then to the banks of the Jordan River. At every stop, the prophets warned Elisha, "Do you know the Lord is taking your master today?" And every time, Elisha answered with pain, barely hidden behind his words, "I know, be quiet." They reached the river. Elisha took his mantle, rolled it up, and struck the water. The river split. They crossed on dry ground.
On the other side, Elijah turned to his faithful disciple. "Tell me, what can I do for you before I'm taken away?" Elisha did not hesitate. His voice shook with holy fire. "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." Elijah nodded slowly. "You've asked for a difficult thing, but if you see me when I'm taken from you, it will be yours." The wind picked up, the sky darkened, and then something divine tore through the veil of the heavens. The wind howled like a lion let loose from its cage. Elisha barely had time to react before the heavens cracked open. From above, a whirlwind surged, fierce, blinding, alive. Fire spun like a tempest in the sky, and from within it, a chariot appeared. A chariot of fire drawn by horses of flame. Elijah was taken, not by death, not by illness, but by glory.
The old prophet rose into the storm, eyes ablaze, robe flickering in the whirlwind like a banner torn from the earth. Elisha watched in helpless awe, knees buckling, arms stretched toward the vanishing light. "My father! My father! The chariots of Israel and their horsemen!" he cried. And then, silence. The sky was empty. Elijah was gone. Only the mantle remained, drifting, weightless, descending slowly from the heavens like a final breath. It touched the earth before Elisha's feet. Trembling, he picked it up with both hands. It was more than cloth. It was a transfer of calling, a divine burden, a spiritual inheritance. Elisha was alone now, but not powerless. Still overwhelmed, he returned to the banks of the Jordan, the same river that had parted for his master. Now it stood before him again, unmoved. A test, a question. He rolled the mantle, struck the waters, and shouted, not with doubt, but with defiance, "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" The river split. The waters obeyed.
And Elisha walked across on dry ground, not as a servant anymore, but as the new voice of heaven. From a distance, the company of prophets in Jericho watched. Their eyes widened, their hearts dropped. "The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha," they whispered. They bowed before him, but he showed no pride. There was no celebration, only resolve. Elisha didn't seek applause. He sought transformation. And the first opportunity came quickly. The people of Jericho approached him, anxious. "Our city is well located, as you can see, but the water is bad, the land is unfruitful." Elisha asked for a new bowl, filled it with salt. He walked to the spring, and without drama, without incantation, simply said, "This is what the Lord says. I have healed this water. No more death or barrenness will come from it." He poured the salt into the source, and the water was healed. Not with thunder, not with fire, but with quiet obedience. The next day, Elisha walked toward Bethel. A group of young men came out and mocked him. "Go on up, bald head! Go on up, bald head!" They weren't just insulting his appearance. They were ridiculing the prophetic calling, taunting him as if daring him to vanish like Elijah. Elisha turned, looked at them, and called down judgment in the name of the Lord. From the forest, 2 bears emerged. The mockery ended in fear and blood. 42 of them fell. It wasn't cruelty, it was divine warning, a message that the mantle wasn't a costume, it was holy. Elisha walked on, with a double portion, and a growing awareness that he was no longer following miracles, he was now responsible for them. The sun scorched the valley floor with merciless heat. Dust clung to the mouths of soldiers and cracked the lips of kings. The armies of Israel, Judah, and Edom had marched 7 days through the desert toward Moab, and now they stood on the edge of collapse. No water, no strength, no hope. King Jehoram of Israel cursed the sky. "Has the Lord called us 3 kings together only to hand us over to Moab?" But King Jehoshaphat of Judah lifted his eyes. "Is there no prophet of the Lord here, that we may inquire of him?" A servant stepped forward. "There is Elisha, son of Shaphat. He used to pour water on the hands of Elijah." So the 3 kings, in royal robes, yet weary and dust-covered, came to stand before the prophet. Elisha's eyes darkened when he saw Jehoram. His voice was sharp, unafraid. "Why come to me? Go to the prophets of your father and mother." Jehoram tried to argue, but Elisha cut him off. "As surely as the Lord lives, if I didn't respect the presence of Jehoshaphat, I wouldn't even look at you." The silence between them grew thick. Then Elisha said, "Bring me a harpist." The kings exchanged puzzled glances, but said nothing. A harpist was found. As his fingers touched the strings, music filled the air like incense, and the Spirit of the Lord descended on the prophet. Elisha's expression changed. His voice thundered, "This is what the Lord says. Dig ditches all through this valley." The commanders stiffened. What kind of command was that?
But Elisha continued, "You will not see wind, you will not see rain, but this valley will be filled with water, and you, your animals, and your armies will drink." He paused, then added with divine certainty, "And this is an easy thing for the Lord. He will also give Moab into your hands." That night, under a sky filled with stars but no clouds, the soldiers began digging. Row after row of trenches scarred the valley floor. By morning, just as the sun began to rise, the impossible happened. Water came, not from above, not from a storm, but from Edom, rushing silently into the ditches. The valley filled, enough to satisfy every soldier, every horse, every breathless hope. But the miracle wasn't done. When the Moabites looked across the valley, the morning sun reflected off the water, red like blood. They shouted, "The kings have turned against each other. Let's go collect the spoils." They charged in chaos, expecting corpses.
Instead, they met armies ready for war, refreshed, revived, and led by the word of the Lord. Moab was crushed. In the desert, where no man survives without rain, God had spoken. No storm had come, no thunder rolled, just obedience. And the voice of a prophet who didn't need signs to believe, only a harp, a word, and a valley of faith. But soon, Elisha would face not the thirst of armies, but the hunger and despair of a widow, one breath away from losing her sons. The knock on Elisha's door was soft, almost hesitant. A widow stood there, eyes hollow, her voice shaking like a dried leaf in the wind. "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know he feared the Lord, but now the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons as slaves." Elisha's heart tightened. He had seen kings beg for water and armies cry out for help, but nothing wounded him like the voice of a mother fighting to keep her children. He asked gently, "What do you have in your house?" She looked down, embarrassed. "Nothing, except a small jar of oil." Elisha nodded. That was enough. He gave no dramatic speech, no signs in the sky, just clear, sacred instruction. "Go, borrow empty jars from all your neighbors, and not just a few. Then go into your house with your sons. Shut the door behind you. Pour oil into all the jars. Set aside the ones that are full." No explanation, just action. She obeyed. She knocked on doors up and down the village. Some gave her small pots, others large jugs. Her sons helped carry them, one trip after another, until the house was filled with emptiness, waiting to be filled. Then they shut the door. No crowd, no performance, just the woman, her sons, and the small jar of oil. She took a breath, lifted the jar,
and tilted it. Oil flowed.
Don't forget to like and share with your friends. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any exciting stories, and turn on the bell to receive notifications firsthand. We want to hear your opinion. Comment below on what you think of this video and share your thoughts with us. Let's be part of this journey of faith and learning together. It filled the first jar, then the second, then the third. Her sons passed jars one after another, and the oil continued, smooth, golden, and endless. The room filled with the smell of provision. Her hands trembled, but her heart beat with faith. "Bring me another jar," she said. Her son looked around, panting. "There are no more." And at that moment, the oil stopped. She ran back to Elisha, eyes wide with awe. "Go," he said, smiling. "Sell the oil. Pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what's left."
No thunder, no flame, just a miracle tucked quietly behind a closed door. In that small home, heaven had multiplied the little, not just to meet a need, but to preserve a legacy. God didn't only save her sons from slavery, He restored her future. But the oil was just the beginning. Soon, Elisha would be welcomed by a woman of wealth, and in her house, not oil, but a promise would be born. Every time Elisha passed through the town of Shunem, a woman watched from her doorway. Not just any woman. She was respected, wealthy, and wise. But her eyes weren't drawn to riches. They were drawn to something sacred in the way this prophet walked. One afternoon, she invited him in for a meal, then another and another. Soon, every time Elisha journeyed that way, her home became his shelter.
One day, she turned to her husband with a spark in her voice. "I know that this man who often comes by is a holy man of God. Let's build a small room for him on the roof, a place with a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, so he can stay whenever he comes." And so they built it, not for favor, not for reward, just to honor. When Elisha returned and found the room prepared, humble, clean, peaceful, his heart was moved. He rested there often, alone with his thoughts and his God. One day, reclining on the bed, he spoke to his servant Gehazi, "Call the Shunammite." She stood in the doorway, hands clasped, posture straight. "You've gone to all this trouble for us," Elisha said. "What can be done for you? Should I speak to the king, to the commander of the army?" She smiled politely. "I dwell among my own people." She didn't want political connections. She asked for nothing. But as she left, Gehazi leaned in. "She has no son, and her husband is old." Elisha nodded. That was it. "Call her back." She stood once more in the doorway. Same posture, same silence. Elisha looked at her gently and said, "About this time next year, you will hold a son in your arms." Her face changed, not with joy, with fear. "No, my lord, man of God, do not deceive your servant." But the word had already been spoken. A year passed, and as the prophet said, she gave birth to a son, a child of laughter, light, and unspoken dreams. The years flowed like a stream. The boy grew strong, running through the fields, playing under the sun, filling the house with life. Until one day, something changed. The boy was in the field with his father when he cried out, "My head! My head!" He collapsed. They carried him home, to his mother. She held him on her lap until noon, and then he died. She did not scream. She did not mourn. She did not call for neighbors. Instead, she climbed the stairs to the prophet's room. She laid the boy gently on Elisha's bed. She shut the door and came down. "Saddle the donkey," she told her husband. I must go see the man of God, and I will return." She didn't say the boy was dead. She didn't say a word about pain. She knew where the promise had come from, and she was determined to go back to the source. The donkey galloped across the fields, dust trailing behind like smoke. The Shunammite woman sat upright, her hands tight on the reins. She said nothing. Her heart didn't race, it burned. She didn't tell her husband. She didn't tell a soul. There was no time for mourning, no space for grief.
Only one thing mattered: get to the man of God. Elisha was on Mount Carmel, alone in prayer, when he saw a familiar figure approaching fast in the distance. He turned to Gehazi. "Look, the Shunammite woman is coming. Run to meet her and ask, 'Are you well? Is your husband well? Is the child well?'" Gehazi rushed to her, but her answer was short. "Everything is all right." But it wasn't. She passed by the servant without slowing. When she reached Elisha, she fell at his feet and clung to him with both arms. The weight of silence collapsed. She said nothing, only wept. Gehazi stepped forward to pull her away, but Elisha raised a hand. "Leave her. Her soul is in deep anguish, and the Lord has hidden it from me." Then her voice broke the air. "Did I ask for a son, my Lord? Didn't I say, 'Don't raise my hopes'?" Elisha's face turned pale. He knew. Quickly he turned to Gehazi. "Take my staff, go, run. Don't greet anyone. Don't stop to answer. Lay my staff on the boy's face."
Gehazi took off down the road, but the woman didn't move. She looked Elisha in the eyes, steady and unshaken. "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." Elisha nodded. He went with her. When they arrived, the house was quiet. No wailing, no chaos. Gehazi had already come back. "The boy has not awakened," he said solemnly. Elisha climbed the stairs. He entered the room. The door closed behind him. There on the bed lay the child, still, pale, cold. Elisha stood before him and prayed. Then he did something no one expected. He stretched himself over the boy, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. The prophet's body warmed the child's. Then Elisha stood and paced the room. Once more he returned to the boy. Again he stretched out over him. Suddenly the child sneezed. Once, twice, 7 times. Then his eyes opened. He was alive. Elisha called Gehazi, barely able to contain the tremble in his voice. "Call the Shunammite." She came up the stairs slowly.
He looked into her eyes. "Take your son." She entered the room, saw the boy standing, and without a word, she dropped to her knees at Elisha's feet, her face to the ground. No tears, no screams, just reverence. Then she stood and embraced her son. In that upper room, where she had once built a bed, a table, and a lamp, life had returned, not by chance, not by ritual, but by faith that refused to let go. The door had been shut, but heaven had not. And Elisha, the prophet of promise, had touched the veil between life and death and pulled it open. But outside that quiet home, the land groaned with famine. And soon Elisha would face hunger, poison, and the question of whether God could still provide when all resources run dry. The land of Israel cracked beneath the sun. The rains had stopped. The soil had hardened. Hunger clawed at doorways like a desperate thief. Families whispered at night, not with words of prayer, but with fear in their bellies.
Elisha had returned to Gilgal, where a small group of prophets gathered around him. Their faces were thin, their eyes sunk into their skulls. They tried to remain hopeful, but famine does not honor silence. It screams through emptiness. One of them went out to the field to gather herbs. He found a wild vine, lush, green, full of round gourds. He plucked them eagerly, sliced them into a pot, and stirred a stew over the fire. As the prophets ate, laughter returned briefly to the circle, until the first spoonful struck a throat. "Man of God," someone shouted, clutching his chest, "there is death in the pot!" They spat out what they could, faces twisted in panic. Poison was already in their mouths. Despair rose like smoke. But Elisha did not panic. He looked at the bubbling stew. He asked for flour, simple, plain, harmless.
He took a handful, walked to the pot, and cast it in. No words of command, no dramatic gesture, just trust. "Pour it out for the people to eat," he said calmly. And they did. Not one was harmed. The pot that once carried death now gave life. Not long after, another test came. A man arrived from Baal-Shalisha carrying 20 small loaves of barley bread and a few heads of new grain. He offered them to Elisha. The prophet turned to his servant. "Give it to the people so they can eat." Gehazi hesitated. "How can I set this before 100 men?" It wasn't mockery, it was math. Elisha's voice did not waver. "Give it to the people to eat, for this is what the Lord says, they will eat and have some left over." He spoke with certainty, not because he saw extra bread, but because he believed in unseen provision. The food was served. Each man took a portion, and another, until all had eaten, fully, joyfully, without limit. When they gathered the remains, there was more than they started with. Not a banquet, not a feast, just a miracle of enough. In famine, Elisha didn't beg for resources. He didn't argue with reality. He simply acted on faith. Poison had no power when mixed with obedience. Scarcity lost its voice when placed in divine hands. But a greater test was coming. Not for a village, not for a crowd, for a man named Naaman, a commander covered in armor and leprosy beneath it. His armor was polished. His rank was high. His victories were legendary. But underneath the steel and metals, Naaman, commander of the Syrian army, was dying. Leprosy crept across his body like a slow curse, and no title could stop it. No sword could strike it down. His strength was powerless. His name meant nothing against the silence of rotting flesh. One day, a voice broke through, not from a general, but from a girl. A young Israelite servant in Naaman's household whispered to her mistress, "If only my master would go to the prophet in Samaria, he would be healed." Hope stirred. Naaman spoke to the king of Syria, who wrote a royal letter. Silver, gold, and fine clothes were packed. A grand entourage formed, and Naaman, with chariots and servants, crossed into Israel with expectation and pride. He brought the letter to Israel's king.
But the king panicked. "Am I God to kill and bring to life? Why does this man send someone to me to be cured of leprosy? He's trying to start a fight." Word reached Elisha.
He sent a message. "Send him to me. He will know there is a prophet in Israel." Naaman arrived at Elisha's house with grandeur, but Elisha didn't come out. Instead, he sent a servant. "Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, and your flesh will be restored." Naaman blinked. That was it? No ceremony? No hand waved over him? No heavenly words? No audience? Just go wash? Fury flared in his chest. "I thought he would surely come out to me. Are not the rivers of Damascus better than any of the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?" He turned and stormed away. But one of his servants ran to him. "My father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, wouldn't you have done it? How much more then when he simply says, 'Wash and be cleansed'?" Naaman stood still,
A warrior faced with the hardest battle of all, humbling himself. Slowly, he descended to the Jordan. He removed his armor, exposed the sores, stepped into the murky water. He dipped once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. 4, 5, still nothing. 6. Doubt rose. 7. And suddenly, his skin changed. Not just healed, restored, soft, clean, new, like the skin of a child. Naaman gasped. Tears filled his eyes. He rushed back to Elisha's home. This time, the prophet met him. Naaman fell before him. "Now I know there is no God in all the world except in Israel. Please accept a gift."
Elisha shook his head. "As surely as the Lord lives, I will not accept a thing." Naaman urged him, but Elisha refused. "A miracle is not for sale." Naaman asked only for one thing, some earth from Israel to take back home. And from that day on, the Syrian commander vowed, no more sacrifices to any god but the Lord. But someone else had been watching. Gehazi, Elisha's servant, followed Naaman in secret. He took the gifts Elisha refused, silver, clothes, lies. But when he returned to Elisha, the prophet's eyes pierced him. "Was not my spirit with you when the man stepped down from his chariot to meet you?" Gehazi's heart sank. Elisha said, "Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and your descendants forever." And Gehazi walked away, white as snow. The school of prophets had grown. New students followed Elisha daily, and with them came the need for space. One day they approached the prophet. "The place where we meet with you is too small. Let us go to the Jordan and cut logs to build a larger place." Elisha nodded. "Go." One of them asked, "Will you come with us?" "I will." And so they went, axes in hand, chopping trees beside the river. Suddenly, a cry broke the rhythm of work. "Oh no, my lord, it was borrowed." An axe head had flown off the handle and plunged deep into the riverbed. For a poor student, this was not a small thing. It was loss. It was shame. Elisha stepped forward. "Where did it fall?" The young man pointed. Elisha cut a stick, threw it on the water, and then iron rose. The axe head floated to the surface like a leaf. The impossible became real. Again. The student retrieved it with trembling hands. There was no sermon, no spotlight,
Just a quiet moment where God proved again, nothing is too small for his attention. But a greater drama brewed in the shadows. The king of Aram was at war with Israel. Yet every ambush he planned was exposed in advance.
"Who among us is the traitor?" he demanded. His officers replied, "None of us, my lord. It is Elisha, the prophet in Israel. He tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom." Fury turned to fear. "Find out where he is," the king ordered. "Send horses, chariots, and a strong force. Surround him." They found Elisha in Dothan. That night, an entire army moved in, silent, swift, surrounding the city. At dawn, Elisha's servant rose. He stepped outside and froze. Every hill was filled with soldiers, horses, and iron. "Oh no, my lord, what shall we do?" he cried. Elisha remained calm. "Don't be afraid." He looked out, and his eyes, though aged, saw what others could not. "Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." The servant's breath caught. Then Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see." And suddenly, the veil lifted. Flames lit the mountaintops.
Horses and chariots of fire surrounded Elisha, a divine army unseen until now. The servant fell back, eyes wide. But Elisha didn't stop there. As the Aramean army advanced, Elisha prayed again, "Strike this army with blindness." They stumbled, confused, disoriented. Elisha walked toward them and said, "This is not the road, and this is not the city. Follow me, and I will lead you to the man you're looking for." He led them straight into Samaria, into the hands of Israel's king. "Shall I kill them, my father?" the king asked. Elisha shook his head. "Would you kill those you captured with your own sword and bow? Give them food and water and let them go." The king obeyed. The army ate, drank, and returned home in peace. From that day on, Aram stopped raiding Israel because one man saw what others could not and chose mercy over might. The years had passed like shadows sliding over the hills of Israel.
The once vibrant, sharp-eyed prophet now lay still in his bed. His hair was white, his breath shallow, but his spirit was not diminished. The fire that once parted rivers, restored children, and exposed armies still burned quietly in his chest. Elisha was dying. Word reached King Joash of Israel, who rushed to his side. He knelt by the prophet's bed, his voice broken. My father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." The same words Elisha had once cried for Elijah now returned to him. Elisha opened his eyes, slow but steady. He wasn't done yet. "Take a bow and some arrows," he said. The king obeyed. "Now open the east window." Joash did. Elisha raised his frail hand and rested it on the king's arms, the prophet's last strength joining the king's future. "Shoot!" The arrow soared into the morning light. Elisha declared, "The Lord's arrow of victory. You will completely destroy the Arameans at Aphek." Then he said, "Take the arrows, strike the ground." The king struck it 3 times and stopped. Elisha's face changed, his voice
even in weakness, turned sharp. You should have struck 5 or 6 times, then you would have completely destroyed Aram. But now you will defeat them only 3 times. Even at the edge of death, the prophet measured faith by persistence. Elisha died. They buried him quickly, as was the custom. The land mourned. But the heavens were not silent. Months later, a group of Israelites were burying a man when they saw Moabite raiders approaching. In panic, they tossed the body into Elisha's tomb and fled. The corpse landed on the prophet's bones, and suddenly, the man revived. He stood up, alive. Even in death, Elisha's anointing remained. His bones still carried the power of heaven. A final miracle, a final message, that God's power does not expire with the prophet. It transcends the grave. From the moment the mantle fell in the dust of the field, to the day his bones gave breath to the lifeless, Elisha's life was not marked by thunder or spectacle, but by unshakable faith, quiet obedience, and miracles that lived far beyond the man. He had followed Elijah. He had surpassed expectations. He had defied death, not just once, but again and again. And in doing so, Elisha left behind a truth etched in history. When a life is fully surrendered to God, even in its final breath, it still speaks.
Did you like the video? Don't forget to leave your like and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any exciting stories, and activate the bell to receive notifications firsthand. And we want to know your opinion. Comment below what you thought of this video and share your thoughts with us. Let's be part of this journey of faith and learning together.